Good evening and welcome to the debut concert of Roanoque Baroque. You're very brave to come out to something brand new that's never been done before. Thank you, and despite the bad spelling, I think it's very kind of you to be with us. And whether you're here in this room or currently streaming on YouTube or joining us later on YouTube, we're so glad you came and could be a part of this new event. It is an exploration in the Baroque, so imagine perhaps you are in some elegant palace someplace this evening, or perhaps in a beautiful church setting, hearing the music of Telemann and Wagenseil and C.P.E. Bach in the places and the style and the imagery that they would have had you share it with them. Because these actually are living composers. They wrote music for their own time and their own place to be vital and alive, and we hope to bring that spirit to you this evening. We open with a short overture to help those who are a little bit late to come in not miss too much. This is from Telemann's orchestral suite La Lyra, the French overture at the start. Telemann was one of the great masters of his time. In fact, one of the stories that's frequently told is that he got every job that J.S. Bach wanted and before he did. So he was typically thought of as the greatest composer of his day, hailed throughout the known Western world. And he wrote in every possible genre, from wonderful orchestral overtures to operas, cantatas, in fact, 1,500 cantatas for church services on Sunday morning. And typically, the cantatas were, 20 minutes to a half an hour long after the 4-hour sermon. So you had to be pretty dedicated to be a part of that part of Baroque music. And we'll do one of those tonight, but I've asked Pastor Phil not to preach. Keep that off the docket. But next we're going to turn to one of his orchestral works. And one of the wonderful things about Telemann is he was a talented musician, performer himself. He was most likely a baritone, which I happen to be as well, so I'll be singing some of his music in a bit. And he also was rumored to have played the viola. And there are very few viola concertos, especially in this era. But Telemann wrote one, and perhaps one of the most remarkable and well-known viola concertos still in the repertoire. And Sarah Pfister is our viola soloist this evening, sharing the beautiful work of Telemann's viola concerto. Some of the orchestra is a little tired, so we're going to give them a break at this point. Thank you very much. And we're going to shift around a little bit to this next piece, cantata by Telemann. And a cantata simply is an Italianate word for to sing. And in the Baroque era, especially in the Lutheran tradition, the cantata was the aesthetic response to the statement of the word. Now, the word would be read from Scripture and then preached upon for quite a long time, as I mentioned earlier. And then the cantata would follow. And the cantatas were written for each Sunday of the church year in response to the gospel reading and in response to the sermon that was being preached. So that there was a sense of the musical commentary, the aesthetic commentary on what had been spoken prior to that. It was the highlight of the service for many who yearned for that beauty and that wonder that came from the musical portrayal of the word. And it was all written in all sorts of different styles. Bach cantatas, of course, often written for full choirs and large orchestras, massive organs that would create great sounds. Many of Telemann's cantatas, of the 1,500 that he wrote, and that's quite a few cycles of the church year with about 50 Sundays a year. How many is that? 30 years of cantatas, one new for every Sunday along the way. About 50 of them were written for solo baritone. And that's why we know, for one reason, that he was himself a baritone, because he wrote them when no one else would show up to sing, probably, that he had those. This particular one is about prayer. We don't know the exact texts that he wrote it for, to reflect upon, and we don't know specifically the author of the text of this cantata, but the suspicion is that it's Telemann himself speaking about his own prayer life. So that the first movement, this Erhöre meine Stimme, Lord, Lord, hear my voice. Please listen. I'm in this terrible condition. I want you to hear my prayer. Fire me up. Feuere mich, fire me with enlightenment so that I might appear before you ready and prepared. Please hear my prayer again, again, again. Erhöre meine Stimme. And the final movement is this wonderful affirmation that Telemann is assured that his prayers will be heard. Ya, 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 ya. He says over and over and over. Ya, ya, ya. You will hear my prayer. You will hear it. And he concludes with this beautiful, and I know that after all of my trials, I'll be resting in your loving arms. Ya, ya, ya. You do hear prayers. You do hear my prayer. But the middle movement is what's truly astounding. This is a setting of the Our Father, in Latinate circles, the Pater Noster, or in the Germanic tradition, the Vater Unser. And this Vater Unser is broken up in every section of the prayer by what are probably Telemann's own reflections on this prayer. So that he says, Vater unser, der du bist in Himmel. Oh, my goodness. How fortunate are we that we can call him Father, the greatest majesty of all creation, and we are his children. Next phrase of the prayer comes, and then a response to that. You can always tell the prayer by the long notes, and you can always tell the reflection as it moves through the program by the fast speech. There's lots more notes and lots more words that come through Telemann's reflection. My favorite moment, if you can have a favorite moment in such things, is the part where he talks about providing for us our daily bread, unser tägliche Brot. And he says, you take care of the birds of the air, and all around that statement, the violins are playing little bird notes. And they play that, and then he thinks, and the beasts of the earth. And then they play really low, da, 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 da. So you can hear the plodding of the beasts. And then it goes on to the next section. But each of these are reflections on the particular phrase that preceded it in the Lord's Prayer. Now, some people say that Franz Joseph Haydn invented this idea of musically commenting on texts, and the words they used were tonmalery. And they say that he did that for the first time in the creation. But here tonight, you have learned that Telemann beat him by about 50 years in doing that exact same thing. So tonmalery, or tone painting, or tone coloring, or telling the story with the musical gesture is what Telemann is doing throughout this charming cantata, written for two violins, continuo, cello and harpsichord, and baritone solo. And the violins are doing this echo stereo thing back and forth. So hopefully That's a lot of fun. So here we are, Telemans Cantata, Erhöre meine Stimme. And I might mention this has a quasi-conductor in the middle. So.
Erhöre meine Stimme, erhöre meine Stimme, erhöre, erhöre, denn ich will Lieds für dir bieten. Ich will Lieds für dir bieten. Erhöre meine Stimme, erhöre meine Stimme, denn ich will Lieds für dir bieten. Erhöre, denn ich will Lieds für dir bieten, für dir bieten. Freue mich mit Andacht an, dass ich voll erleuchten kann, für dein reines Auge treten. Freue mich mit Andacht an, dass ich voll erleuchten kann, für dein reines Auge treten, für dein reines Auge treten. Erhöre meine Stimme, erhöre meine Stimme, erhöre, erhöre, denn ich will Lieds für dir bieten. Ich will Lieds für dir bieten. Erhöre meine Stimme, erhöre meine Stimme, denn ich will Lieds für dir bieten. Erhöre, denn ich will Lieds für dir bieten, für dir bieten. ein Trost ist dies, oh, welch ein Trost ist dies, dass Gott uns will vergönnen, dass wir ihn Vater dürfen nennen und dass wir mit der großen Majestät, die über Erd und Himmel geht, als Kinder reden können. Geheiliget werde dein Name. In Himmel höret Gott die Engelzungen an, wie Sion unterlass ihm Ruhm und Ehre bringen. Hier unten will auch ich, so gut ich immer kann, in Ehrerbietigkeit das heilig, heilig singen. Dein Reich komme. Ich hoff in Glauben drauf, dass dermaleinst zu mir und alle Frommen das Reich des Lebens werde kommen. Dein Wille geschehe auf Erden wie im Himmel. Mein schwaches Fleisch und Blut will oftmals nach eigenen Willen des Herzens Sehnsucht stillen und weiß nicht, was es sich den größten Schaden tut. Was Gott will, das allein ist gut. Der will, dass mir sie voll und ewig selig gehe. Darum, dein Will, o Herr, geschehe, dein Will, o Herr, geschehe, o Herr, dein Will, o Herr, geschehe. Unser tägliches Brot gib uns heut. Du nährst die Vögel in der Luft und alle Tier auf Erden. So wird auch mir, denn mein Bitten so dir ruft, die Not darf nicht versaget werden. Vergib uns unsere Schuld, als wir vergeben unseren Schuldigern. Dies geht den Menschen sauer ein, die Feinde wie sich selbst zu lieben. Jedoch, weil du es vorgeschrieben, dass wir versöhnlich sollen sein, so soll an mir auch keine Rache kleben, denn wer vergibt, dem wirst du auch vergeben. Und führe uns nicht in Versuchung. Ach, steuere doch dem Teufel und der Welt, dass sie mich nicht von dir verführen. Du kennst mein eitles Herz und weißt, wie leicht es fällt. Drum wirst du mich durch deinen Geist regieren, dass ich auf den Versuchungstag durch in das Feld gewinnen mag. Sondern erlöse uns von den Übeln. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun. Ja, das wirst du tun. Ja, das wirst du tun. Ja, ja, das wirst du tun. Das wirst du tun. Das wirst du tun. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun. Das wirst du tun. Und mich nach diesem Leide bei süßer Himmelsfreude, bei süßer Himmelsfreude in deinem Schoße lassen ruhen. In deinem Schoße, in deinem Schoße lassen ruhen, in deinem Schoße lassen ruhen. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun. Ja, das wirst du tun. Ja, das wirst du tun. Ja, ja, das wirst du tun. Das wirst du tun. Das wirst du tun. Ja, 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 das wirst du tun, das wirst du tun.
Thank you. It's fun to know that in the midst of what we think is a very staid liturgical tradition, you can kind of kick up your heels and dance a little bit when you know that God has answered your prayers. You know, it's okay to say, yeah, yeah. It almost has a beer stein in its hand right there. It really does. In fact, we were in Leipzig once on tour doing Bach music in Bach City, and the local Lutheran church hosted us on the chamber orchestra tour that we were on and had us out into their garden afterwards, and sure enough, they had locally brewed by that church his own beer. So in that event, a very good German tradition to have. We're going to take a little bit of a trip now in the later part of the Baroque period. Some call this the Enlightenment or the Empfindsamkeit, a different sort of Rococo style. Baroque, the word itself means to be fancy, and you've heard a lot of fancy tonight. A lot of trills, a lot of 16th notes, a lot of running around. These last two pieces are pushing the envelope a bit of what we call Baroque, and they're perhaps even fancier. You can tell by Georg Wagenseil's hair how fancy it has gotten by this time. It's got to come all the way down your shoulders and have lots of curls in it. This is right on the cusp of the age of Mozart. In fact, it's entirely possible that Wagenseil and Mozart knew each other, overlapping by 25-some years in their lives. And Wagenseil indeed was in Vienna at the time Mozart was as well. Musical periods flow and cross over each other a lot. This concerto probably written a little bit earlier in Wagenseil's career. And again, he was a composer like Telemann, who would have written opera and sacred church music and concerted music as well. Writes this concerto in A for cello. And I didn't tell them I was going to tell you this tonight, but I think it's kind of fun to know that our two string soloists tonight are sisters, and they also play sister instruments, that both Rebecca's cello and Sarah's viola were made by the same maker in California, and you can tell in part by the beautiful decoration on both instruments, how unique they are shaped and formed. And again, that's a very Baroque gesture, because instruments of the Baroque period would have had all sorts of ornamental things on them. In fact, others of our musicians tonight do indeed as well, with engravings and tattoos, you might say, on the instruments to bring them out and give them their own special character and flavor. Oh, there it is, yes, the back tattoo, and the lion's head at the top. But Wagenseil, a wonderful composer. How many in the room had heard of Wagenseil before reading the program tonight? You're in tune with almost everyone, because this music is almost lost in time, but there are some wonderful researchers out there, the same kind of effort that was made to research the Telemann cantata, to bring back this music that is somewhere in a dusty church basement somewhere, and thank heavens that the churches had basements, because this music has been preserved for centuries and comes back to life in a glorious way. 3 movements, a fast, a slow that nonetheless seems pretty fast because there's so many notes inside of the slow, and then a joyous finale to the Wagenseil Cello Concerto. Well, it was really, really hard to develop a program for the opening of Roanoque Baroque without Bach on it. But I thought we'd hold off just a little while to build some energy toward Johann. So we threw on one of his sons. And the idea that Bach was alone as a musician is just, unheard of, really, because Bach was from a whole line and family of musicians for generations before his time and throughout Thuringia, his region of Germany. There were Bachs everywhere. Just about every town had a Bach musician in it, and they moved around and really were the dominant force of music making in the entire region, both in the church and in the court. They were everywhere. And his brother and his uncles, and then many of his sons. If there's anyone in the room that can name all of Bach's children, you get a free pass for life for Roanoque Baroque concerts. No hands, I'm seeing no hands. On YouTube, if you're out there, just put that in the comments, and we'll include you too. Amazing legacy, amazing story to tell, but typically CPE, JC, and WF were the big three of Bach's sons who went on into England and into the courts of northern Germany to make their music. And in this particular piece, this Sinfonia, or Symphony Number 3 of CPE, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, who happens to be, as it says on the sign, the godson of Georg Philipp Telemann. There's a lot of connection here. Telemann and Bach were very, very closely associated. He wrote a series of symphonies, and this is the nascent time of symphony writing. It's not like Beethoven or Mahler, where you're going to be here for another hour and a half. Don't worry, it's all right. And no big chorus comes up at the end either. Very much more a genteel, courtly evening, gathering around after dinner, hearing a little musical entertainment. But here again in this Stil Galant, this sort of Empfindsamkeit Rococo style, we have CPE writing very decorous music. And if you noticed in the Wagenseil, the composers around 1740, 1750, 1730 discovered something very new. It was called changing dynamics or changing volume levels. Suddenly very quiet, and then suddenly very loud, and suddenly very quiet, and suddenly very loud. They just loved to play with this. It was this brand new fun toy that they discovered. Because typically before that, you'd have a whole movement that would be loud or a whole movement that would be soft, maybe a little variation, but not these wonderful dynamic bursts of energy and that would change. Listen for that closely in this little symphony, especially at one point where the low strings and bassoon just pretty much rock the place. And then and the strings echo that, and then it's very, very quiet, and they come back. It's they're having a wonderful game, almost a tennis match between piano, soft, and forte, loud, back and forth. Again, thank you so much for coming to our opening event. Looking toward December, February, and May for further concerts. You can always go to Roanoque Baroque, however you want to spell it. Both websites work to take you toward future programs, and look up in the little hashes in the corner to see the performances page of that page. We'll have a reception afterwards this evening. Please linger and enjoy the musicians' company over in the Welcome Center to my right. There'll be cookies and coffee and such to join us. And thank you for the volunteers that have prepared that. And largely thankful for this evening for St. John Lutheran Church and the ministry outreach of Beauty and Arts that is the patron of this organization and our offering. The Ministry of Beauty and Arts here at St. John Lutheran does all the artwork in the hallways, sponsors readings, quilt making, lots of different things that give testimony to the glory and beauty of God and his witness and presence in our lives. So come and be a part of that at any time you'd like. And of course, if you enjoyed this evening, and you want to hear it again, it's easy. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock at First Evangelical Presbyterian Church down in the Carillion Hospital Complex. Go ahead and tell some friends about it. It's a nice big place, plenty of seating for them tomorrow. And our wonderful partner congregation down there at First Evangelical Pres would welcome you too for the 3 o'clock performance. Same program. Would love to have you with us. Thanks again for being here this evening at the opening, whether you're live or on YouTube. And thanks to our staff in the back for making all the technical things work, and we'll conclude this evening with CPE's Sinfonia Number 3.